So let's start this session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us live or watching the session at your convenience. A warm welcome to all students, faculty, and alumni from BCU, now turned IIEST Shibpur. I hope your Saturday has been wonderful so far. My name is Nandini Majumdar. I'm a second year student in the Department of Architecture and Planning at IIEST Shibpur. I'm very excited to be your host for today's session, and it's organized by the Architecture and Planning Special Interest Group under the IIEST Shibpur Networking Program. Before we begin, I encourage you to post your questions in the Zoom chat. After addressing pre-collected questions from our students, I will pick up additional live questions from the chat if time permits. So let me introduce our accomplished alumni who are also speakers for today. First, we have Mr. Abijit Brahmachari. A brief background. Abhijita is fondly known as Brahmada by his friends and college acquaintances. A 1992 graduate of B College Architecture, he brings over 30 years of diverse experience in his field. Starting his career with Mukul Mitra's firm in Kolkata, he later pursued a master's in planning in the United States. Brahmada is licensed to practice in all 50 United States states, and in addition to Canada and Mexico, having passed the rigorous 9-part architect registration examination. Currently, as a senior associate at SMMA, he focuses on project management and business development. Brahmada's passion for design, leadership roles, and alumni engagement are well complemented by his love for music. So, Pramada, could you please begin by sharing a cherished memory of yours from your time at Shibpur?
Of course. I'm so happy to be in this call with the current students. Nandini, you're doing a fascinating job coordinating this event. Thanks to GAABESU, especially Shapunda, for taking the leadership. So, as far as cherished memories, this 5 year that we spent on campus was the happiest and most carefree stretch of 5 years of our lives. It's hard to pick one event, but if I have to, it would be the Zonasa of Bhubaneswar. I was in third year at that time, and I happened to be the NASA SEC. We went back and forth whether we would actually attend that Zonasa or not, but in the end we did. And it so happened that we pretty much did a clean sweep there. We won most of the important categories, and this is probably one of the most cherished memories that I can think of right now. But like I said, all of 5 years was a wonderful stretch of 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Pramada. That is so inspiring for us current students.
Sure.
So, our next speaker for today is Mr. Debargha Sengupta, whose journey from an aspiring urban planner to now CEO of Metropolitan Architects and Planners exemplifies motivation and excellence. Since joining the firm in 2008, he rose to CEO in 2021, leading impactful federal projects involving master planning, feasibility studies, and strategic designs. Previously, he served as planner and deputy zoning administrator for the city of Kentwood, Michigan. A certified planner and lead accredited professional, the Bargata holds a master's in urban planning from the University of Buffalo and a bachelor's in architecture from our Bengal Engineering College, Shibpur. So, the Bargata, you must also have some special memory from your college days to share.
Of course. I think the 5 years of college in BEC was, I think, the best part of my life. So I have many memories from there. But before I get started, I want to echo Brahmada's commendments for Shapunda and Nandini you for hosting this. And also a big thanks to GAABESU for bringing together this SIG and these sessions. So it so happens that my memory is also related to NASA and Zonasa. I think it was our second year of college. I was in a second year. I was the unit designee, and we had gone to Roorkee. And two of our entries in that event was the GSEN trophy and the Louis Icahn trophy. I was involved in the Louis Icahn Trophy, and this was documentation of a Santali village from Purulia. The sheets were spectacular, and we were very confident that we were going to be at least recognized. So at some point of time, we got called by Mr. Doshi, B.V. Doshi, and he really applauded us on our work on the Louis Icahn Trophy. And then he said, sorry, I have to disqualify you. And we just, we were completely devastated. So we asked, what did we do wrong? And he said that, this entire entry was supposed to be black and white. You guys did such a great job, but you have used color, so we have to disqualify you. But I can tell you that this was one of the best works that we have seen entered into the Louis Icahn Trophy. So for us, I think that was a really big compliment coming from such a great architect. So that's one of my memories.
That is something like being recognized by B.V. Doshi, the B.V. Doshi.
Yes.
So those are some beautiful memories, and now we're going to dive into the heart of our discussion today. We're going to start with the pre-collected questions right away. So let's answer each question in 2 minutes or less so that we can cover more. First question is for you, Debargha. What inspired your passion for architecture and planning? How did your time at IIEST Shibpur influence your foundation? And what motivated you to pursue higher education in USA specifically?
Yeah, I think for me, architecture was more of a happenstance. I'm not one of those kids who grew up wanting to be an architect. I'm sure there are others like that here. I actually wanted to study physics in a reputable college, but I fell in love with architecture after I got into BEC. It's kind of like an arranged marriage. I would not know, but I actually fell in love with the Masters of Architecture. I studied contemporary architecture. I think Professor Shibobroto Halder was our teacher, teaching us contemporary architecture. I started liking the interdisciplinary nature of architecture, loved how symbolism and pragmatism were blended together. And I think that's basically what really kept me passionate about architecture. Now, during my undergraduate thesis, I do not know exactly how, but I picked a project which was a rehabilitation of a squatter settlement in Kolkata. And as I started working on that, it became more than just an architectural project. It was somewhat a planning project too. I had to look at infrastructure. I was looking at costs, funding, how it would be implemented, what kind of policy decisions needed to be made. And that's how I sort of got attracted to planning. So after I graduated, I started talking to some of the planners who were, from our department, and then, some of them, they had done their masters outside of India. So one such planner was Joydeep. I believe he was later a professor in Kharagpur IIT, but he had done his planning masters from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And when I talked to him, he was the first person who talked about this broad aspects of planning, and that really attracted me towards planning. And at that point of time, I decided that I should pursue planning in the US. Yeah. So that's the story.
It's nice to hear about the transition from architecture to planning, because we've seen many seniors pursuing this, but we never knew where it came from, this sudden change. So thank you so much, Debargha, for shedding some light on that. And Brahmada, would you like to share your perspective on this?
Sure. Thank you. So I think it's very similar to Debargha's career path. So for me also, first year in architecture, through the middle of first year, I was still thinking back and forth whether to stay in this department or try joint one more time and go to another department. But I think it kind of sort of started changing towards the end of first year. My liking to architecture started not so much from the design perspective, but how the buildings are put together. In our doc class, we learned the methods of construction, and then with that, slowly towards the end of first year, second year, we started designing and elevating a plan, and how like thousands of options started to show up once you start elevating a building. So that's kind of like towards the end of first year, beginning of second year. I kind of sort of started falling in love, and I think I knew that it is my profession by end of second year, third year, when I studied a little bit more, and I started identifying the designers by the look of a building, Convinde or Rajrial, Doshi, et cetera, et cetera. And at that point, there was no coming back from architecture, and I knew that this is my career path. Why planning? My master's thesis was a rather large thesis. I wanted to do too much. Then I ended up doing cut it down. So it was a site planning of IGNO, and then I concentrated on the administrative part of the building to do the architectural design. But there are so many things that I came across during that were planning related, and so that kind of I started thinking about planning. Also, why planning? Because that was a normal course at that time. Architecture planning. You complete your education, and then prior to our classes, a few of our classmates made the trip to the U.S. So it was interesting. We did not know much about U.S. at that time. Like a newspaper, you get to hear about Los Angeles, New York. That's about it. But it was, it's just something that I wanted to try. I found challenging, and it just happened. I found this admission offer, and with some money, scholarship, etc. So I said, why not? Let's try. So that's how I ended up in this country, and since then, um, I completed planning, but pretty quickly I came back to architecture. Like within a year of after graduating from planning, I said, I think architecture is my place. So I came back to architecture.
Thank you so much, Ramada. Now, like considering what you said about like the challenges you face, so we all know like transitioning from a country like India to a country like USA like comes with its own unique challenges. So, what were the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? And like, what cultural or professional differences should students and young professionals now be prepared to navigate if they
Yeah,
like to follow?
absolutely. So when I came back to architecture after my planning, I think one of the biggest challenge was understanding the construction technique in the USA. There's a huge difference between how things are put together in India. I'm talking about like 30 years ago, versus how things are put together here. There is a light frame construction, and other things that we did not learn in India. So learning the construction technique for the first few years, as a, let's say, interning in architecture, was a challenge. And um, uh, the two other things: when you come from your the loving enclosure of your mom and dad into a new country, I think the personal finance becomes uh, one of the biggest challenges. So making sure you have a job now, but are you going to have a job next semester? Are you going to have a job next year? So personal finance will always be in your mind. In India, I think the doctors, engineers, architects enjoy this social um, status. It is not here. There's so many engineers, so many architects. It's just another profession. Staying competitive, thinking about how things will, uh, how you'll find yourself next year, will be there. And then the third thing is being an immigrant. Your visa status is a very, very important thing to stay legal in this country. When we came as a student in student visa, but it was almost like a normal course. Like you get a job, you change the visa from student to work visa, and then stay in work visa for so many years, and then slowly transition to a green card. I think that has changed in last 10, 15 years with so many immigrants trying to come into this country. I think it started with the IT profession. No offense to the ITP folks. So those are the three major things that will be in your mind. Learning construction technique, making sure your personal finance is secured, and making sure your legal visa status remains legal. I think those are the three things that I can think of that we had to overcome.
Thank you, Pramanda. Like even as like students now, like the first thing we think about, like when we like consider doing a master's in some other country's finances, like how many years, like how much money per semester, whether we'll get a scholarship or not, where we'll get a scholarship, all these things. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for mentioning that.
But like
And
there are problems, there are ways to overcome. So don't want to discourage anybody.
uh, thank you so much. So Debargha, how about your journey and challenges? Something unique that you'd like to mention?
Yes, so I want to talk, I think Pramada talked about a lot of the practical aspects of pursuing higher studies in the US. I want to talk about some of the cultural and social aspects. At least when I was in India, this was the pre-social media era. So for us, the United States was this one big country. Everything was like New York. We did not really know the country that well. But I think some of my observations that may be insightful for others is that the US is not a monolithic country. There are lots of differences in language, behavior, values. So as architects and planners, where our job is to develop places and spaces that offer an intimate experience, we really need to understand and recognize those cultural differences. The other part is, again, I think you have to learn as students to be a very keen observer. Things are constantly changing, and our job is to provide a space for our users. So if we are not observers, if you're not learning from what we are seeing, I don't think we are doing a good service. And finally, I think some of the things that I wish somebody told me when I was a student is that, we should study history, politics, socioeconomics, statistics, and other things that are not directly related to architecture. At least we thought it was not important, but I think it is very important. And as a practitioner, after whatever 20, 25 years, I feel that I should have studied more about those things. And also, I would say this, I think, multiple times, keep an open mind, learn as much as you can, and use your best judgment.
Thank you, Debargha. Brahmadan, question for you. According to you, how should aspiring architects prepare for higher education in the USA? Like, what aspects, such as like CGPA, portfolio, overall profile, carry the most weight in the admissions process?
Sure. So I think, like I said before, like when we thought about or started dreaming about coming to the US 89, 90, there was not much resources available. That was like a pre-internet era. The only place we could get some information was making a trip to local USCFI and get some video of various universities. I think that has changed. I think with the internet, like students have access to the information from all over the world. So that is not the case. So I'm not going to talk about go to USCFI. So that's not the way to do. So in today's the world, since the information is at your fingertips, for those of you who are thinking about coming to the US for higher studies, I think the best option is to go to those schools' website and find out for a graduate degree what are the requirements. But generally, GRE, taking GRE is, it gives you, taking GRE and doing a good score, gives you this edge. Not all schools require GRE, but taking GRE is always advisable, because even for the schools that do not require GRE, your good GRE score, puts you in a different strata. So to that end, I say start thinking about that from third year. I think, also do not think taking GRE once would be enough. I know that there is a money involved there, but it's always second attempt or third attempt, you can improve your scores. So start from third year, start studying for GRE. Other than that, I think other important things are your portfolio of work. When someone is reviewing your application, your portfolio of work is a very important document to tell the reviewer who you are, what have you done. I know these are easier to say. I'm just going to go through the bullet point, and one Zoom call is not enough. But I'll be happy to talk to individual students, if they want to contact. So the portfolio of work is important. Your current GPA, I know we did not study enough. We didn't care about our scores, but your score is important. Your current GPA, statement of purpose, like why are you planning to, make this journey? References, get references for like a few professors, if you have worked in other firms, get references from those peoples, and start working on your resume, have it reviewed by your dadas and didis, by anyone else in your family who is who has uh, experience in teaching. So those are the bullet points, but like I said, like one Zoom call is not enough. I think GAABESU has, they have some plan of connecting aspiring students with like a mentors, but I'm always available. Please reach out. Anyone from the department who is interested to have something reviewed, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Ramada.
Thank you.
Very insightful answer for our students. And so, continuing with your networking point, like we know that networking and mentorship are the vital themes of this platform. So, for Debargha, how did networking and mentorship shape your career? What strategies like would you recommend for students to build valuable connections?
So I wish I had more mentorship when I was in my undergraduate days, but at least, what was available to us, our seniors, I think I learned a lot from them. I did pursue a different career path than my mentors, my seniors, my jockeys, as we used to call them. But throughout my career, I think I have found really good mentors. I had a professor in my graduate school who had been in connection with me for a very long time. He's the one who got me interested in community planning. Then I have had two really good bosses, and they are the ones that I always went with questions to, anytime I have any trouble. And then I have one colleague who is a lot senior to me, and I think she just changed the way I look at planning. So mentors are extremely important. In terms of networking, I again wish I knew more people. I wish I was a better networker than I am. But I also had to sort of train myself to become extroverted. It's so important to just walk up to a person and strike a conversation, or when you meet someone at a conference or at a meeting that you haven't met before, to just walk up to them and strike a conversation in a congenial way. I wish I knew the skills, when it really mattered. But in general, I think it's easy to start at any point of time. Start with your peers, start with your colleagues, try to go to conferences and meet people and start your networking, because It's going to get you jobs. It's going to get you contracts. It is going to get you projects. And if not anything, it will get you wisdom. So I think it's extremely important. It has been pivotal in my career. And, you know, if you guys can afford it, play golf, join a country club. It doesn't matter how you do it, but it's important.
Thank you, Debargha. Your point on character building is like really so important. And next question for you. What technical and soft skills do you consider critical for architects and planners aiming to build a career in the USA? How important are internships or prior work experience when applying to graduate programs, according to you?
So, Pramada, would you want to go first?
So, sure, absolutely. So, Nandini, are you asking about getting your foot into the colleges versus uh, work experience?
So like whichever is more important according to like if a college admits us like or wants to admit us, like would they look at like prior work experience or not? And like
Uh,
a student having prior work experience versus a student not having, like both having the same grades and same profile, like would it matter?
yeah, it would matter in a way. So, not necessarily for what you're studying, but again, going back to your personal finance. So the students who are admitted to the U.S. Schools are not generally allowed to work outside the campus, but the students are allowed to work on campus. So there are works like CAD operator, Revit operator for various on-campus jobs. You can work as a research assistant. You can work as a teaching assistant. So, in terms of getting those kind of on campus jobs, I think your prior experience would prove very, very valuable. You can apply for those jobs. In terms of getting your coursework done, I'm not sure because in a new course you're learning a new thing. So your like a skill to draw, skill to write a good report is always helpful. But I think it's most important, like your previous experience will help you get on-campus jobs and fund yourself through the graduate program. That's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Thank you, Brahmanda. And like, would it matter from an admission point of view, like whether a student would be admitted or not, like apart from the funding part?
Yeah, I think if you have a good working experience, I think that will go in your portfolio of work. So I think that will make your portfolio look stronger rather than doing just the school work, of course.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So now we're coming to a very important topic for architecture students. We know that licensing and qualifications differ across countries. So could you please both talk about how the licensing process in the USA contrasts with that of India? And did either of you pursue additional certifications after moving to the USA? And how do they differ from your studies in India? So Ramada, would you please like to begin?
Yeah, of course, of course. So this is so for those who want to pursue your career in architecture in the USA, getting licensed is critical from many angles. One such is in many jurisdictions within the USA, you cannot call yourself an architect if you are not a licensed architect. Also, for any if you are like going after any government project, having your license is critical. Um, how is it? How is it different? Back then, when we graduated, graduating from accredited school, accredited by COA, was enough to get a license in India. Things may have changed. But in the USA, just simply graduating with a Bachelor of Architecture degree from an accredited school is not enough to get you license. For license, you have to take a multiple exam, architect registration examination. It used to be 9 subjects. It's changed from 9 to 7. I think now it's like a 6 subjects. But to be eligible to sit in the examination, you have to have so many years of experience, like an internship experience in working in various type of work. Um, so first step is to graduate from an accredited school. Second step is to apply whether you can sit in the ARE examination. And third step is actually taking the examination and passing the examination. But once you go through that process, you become eligible to practice in all 50 states in the USA and also Canada and Mexico. So it's a critical if you want to go in that direction, and there is a process involved even after graduating.
All right. And how is the difficulty level of the exam according to you?
Yeah, difficulty level it's more difficult than you think. It is mostly multiple choice. You can easily eliminate, 2 of the 4 questions, but then you are stuck with it is the third or the fourth. So oftentimes people have to take one subject for more than once. And if you take a subject and you fail that subject, you have to wait like 6 months before you can take that exam again. For me, I'm no shame. I took like 2 exams twice of the 9, but I'm happy that it's behind me, and I'm taking care of that.
Thank you, Brahma. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing that with us. And so, Debargha, anything you'd like to add to this?
Yes, I can talk about the other part, which is planning. So I do have a credential, which is American Institute of Certified Planners. It's also an exam that you have to take, and it's definitely not as long or as difficult as the architect's registration exam. It's a single exam, but I think it's very experience-driven and very broad-based, quite application-based. So mostly these are case studies. And as Promoda was saying, that oftentimes there are detractors and multiple choice questions. But I think AICP used to have, at least when I took it, I think one of the tough questions used to be, oh, there could be more than one correct answers, and you have to pick all the correct answers. You don't know how many. But I think for anyone who has practiced as a government planner at some point in their life and has exposure to enough projects of different complexity and variety, they will figure out how to pass those exams. And also, as Bromoda mentioned, that these credentialing exams in the US, they typically require you to have some sort of documented experience before you can take the exam. So that's one thing. The other part is with most of these credentials, I don't know if it's the case in India now, but for most of these credentialing exams, you also have to have continuing education credits, meaning that you have to have so many different courses or webinars or seminars that you have to attend, and you have to log those credits to keep your credential. So I think that's an important difference from at least what I know of the certifications or credentials in India.
Thank you, Debargha. And a reminder to our audience, if anyone has any questions that they need to be addressed, feel free to type in the Zoom chat. We'll try to cover them. So now let's hear about some significant projects that shaped your careers. Debargha, could you please share a project that had a major impact on your professional growth?
Well, I can tell you 5, but okay. So when my first project was basically building my parents' house, and that I started on that when I was still in my 5th year. I was working on my thesis and working on the plans. of my parents' house back then. And when the house was completed, I just realized how little I knew. And then there was another project, which was renovation of Shagurdatta Hospital. And I was working for one of our seniors, Dhruvo Goswami. And I learned a lot from there. I think that was the first time when I realized how important the different infrastructure, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, those things were important for architecture. And, and that point of time, I wished I had studied those subjects a little bit more when I was in college. But I think what really changed my life was when I was working on a comprehensive plan for the city that I used to work for, city of Kentwood in Michigan. I had the opportunity to work with Bill Johnson of JJR, which later on became Smith and JJR. I'm sure Abhijit or folks who are in the US, they know of Smith JJR. And I had only a brief exposure to him, but he was immensely influential in making me choose a more rigorous planning pathway than just working as a city planner. And then after I joined the company that I am the CEO of now, I did one major project in 2018, and that was a master plan for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It was a 2-year-long project, extremely complex. I worked with 7 different consultants, had several people who were my clients. I had to work very hard to develop consensus. And I think we were extremely lucky to have a successful project because it was so complex and so nuanced. And I think that won us the best federal planning project and from the American Planning Association in 2019. So I think that was also one of the most significant projects that I worked in.
The transition of this difficulty level, it was interesting. And
Yes.
Brahmada, so what about you?
Sure, I'll be happy to share in a few. So, so when I started in the architecture business, like any intern would, you always question, can you do it or can you not? I mean, are you going to fail or are you going to succeed? So at the beginning of my career, I worked for a small firm in Boston area, where they had a few renovation projects for Harvard School of Public Health. Those are small projects, but that 6-7 years was probably my foundation of my career. So this is where I started as an intern. Slowly, I became like a junior architect to a detailer to a project architect to a project manager running the projects. So I definitely remember those 6 years of learning, and all of a sudden they made me a project manager. So you go to the site, talk to the contractor, talk to the client. It was challenging, but I think those are very good 6 years of learning. Other than that, I think later on, for a different firm, I was a project manager for a rather large design, including a mid-rise, a high-rise, a few low-rises. So I kind of led the design with the team that added to the confidence level. And then later on, I actually ran the construction. So there's a design phase services for architects. There's a design phase services of leading the design, and there's a construction phase services where you go to that they call OAC meeting, which is the owner architect contractor meeting. You sit in that meeting every week, so usually weekly, and you hear from the contractor what are the issues, how do you solve those. So those 5 years I also um, remember as a confidence building 5 years. Two other projects I'd like to mention is later on I worked on a Logan Airport a renovation of Terminal B. That was a challenging project because I was managing construction and managing design. And one last the design project, I must. We did our architect's own residence, and that was our standard project in school. Later on, when we moved into this house, we did a quite substantial addition to this house, and that project was also like one of the um, happy memories. I think we this is where I'm living. I'm using this space, so those are the few projects that are it kind of like I remember as interesting projects.
Thank you, Brahma. It's very inspiring. The last word was very inspiring.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I never thought I would be able to do that architect's own residence. But when we moved to this town, we moved to like a very small house that we could afford. But then we added on. And Dr. Banerjee has been to our house a few times. So,
Thank you, Brahma. Now, coming to the client interaction meeting that you mentioned,
yeah.
um, how do client expectations differ between India and USA, like in terms of design preferences, budgets, project timelines, and more?
Yeah. I think that Um, so I don't think there's a much of a difference between India and someone who has design experience or working experience in India can relate to the working here. The key difference are like a few differences. Like in the USA, the disciplines are quite um, specific. For example, in India, we did the site planning, we did some of the landscaping, we did the building design. But in the USA, the building design for the architect is specific to the footprint of the building. And then there are other disciplines like civil engineers usually do the site planning, et cetera, et cetera. So the jobs are very, very well defined between what you do, what architect does versus what site planner or landscape architects do. Um, but general expectation from the client is you complete the design on time, and if it takes longer, you deal with that. Most of the time, there are some good clients who will give you like additional services, but not everyone does that. Um, Construction is also like very regimented. You're making sure the construction happens on budget, on schedule. So I don't think there's a much of a difference between India and USA when you are managing design and managing construction. I think it's very similar, I would think.
All right. And Brahmada, you got a compliment in the chat, just so you know.
Oh, really? Hope it's okay. I'll take a look.
And
Thank
Debargha, anything you'd like to add to this?
So I think one thing that I've seen, at least in my experience with my planning clients, is that, again, this may have changed. My experience of India is dated. But in India, usually most of the clients, you would know who's the top guy. And what you are doing is you are trying to make sure the top guy is happy. At least that's what it used to be. In the US, at least in my experience, I have found that my client is not one person. It's usually a committee or a board, or there are subject matter experts that, they come to you with all their own ideas and plans. And I think one of the hardest jobs is to somehow figure out a way to develop consensus in your client. So that to me is a little bit of a difference from India and the US. And I think for the rest of the things, I agree with Bromoda that budgets, I think I spend a lot of time value engineering our projects and designs. So budgets are extremely important. I think they appreciate good design. Most of the times your clients are quite educated. They have enough exposure, so they value good design. And of course, I think the last thing I would say is I really try hard to manage my clients' expectations. I try not to promise anything that I cannot deliver. In the long run, it serves us well. And that's about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Debargha. And we have a question in the chat. So I'll just interpret it. Trishit said, his question is related to AI, I guess. How is AI helping or not helping in learning methods of construction when moving to a new region? And what are the challenges that we face now, due to the growing use of AI? Like,
I mean, I can take that. I mean, we have not seen any significant um, effect yet, but all farms or large size farms are getting ready to embrace what AI would bring to the profession. Um, uh, there are few AI um, effects are felt. I mean, for every meeting, we are generating like a meeting minutes from your meeting. AI is being used, but
Right.
in terms of how to use the design software, I think that's yet to come. But we know that it's going to be there pretty soon, and the farms are getting ready to embrace the effect of AI. But there has not been any significant effect yet. It's still Revit. I think most farms have moved on from 2D CAD to Revit. So 2D CAD is a thing of past, and most of the new younger employees don't even know how to use 2D CAD. And also, like, we are finding that it's not it's probably like more efficient, even when the client does not require even when the client requires that we produce a CAD file, we do it in Revit and then produce CAD out of that, as opposed to drawing 2D files. But yeah, going back to that question, the effect of AI is yet to be felt, but we are expecting some changes.
thank you, Pramada.
Yeah, if I can, Nandini, I also
Yes, of
wanted to
course.
add just a couple of small things that, I think AI in general is still a nascent field, and its impacts on both architecture and planning. I believe the jury is still out. We don't know exactly to what extent it will impact. But I think in general for AI, it's important to understand what the limitations are. AI is based on the knowledge that is documented today, right? In many cases, as architects and planners, we try to base our decisions on primary knowledge, not secondary knowledge, right? So it is going to be very difficult, at least in the short run, for AI to replace that. So that's something I think I should add.
Thank you, Debargha. So, at the moment, it's not something we should worry about much.
I mean, you should. It will be there before you
Yes,
know it.
yes, definitely.
But that was a good question, like to talk about.
And next question is from Gaurav Dada. His question is, does the AIA have any important roles in your professional lives? And how much importance should a fresh graduate put on getting themselves involved with similar organizations in general?
Yeah, I think I can take that, Debargo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
So they're all related, like being licensed, and AIA, and there is another body called NCARB, NCARB. They're all related. The way it works is after you graduate from your for accredited school, you start an account, a student account with NCARB. it's called NCARB. It's the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. So NCARB is the body that looks at your degree, looks at your experience, and finally allows you to sit in that ARE examination. And NCARB, on the other hand, is also related to AIA. AIA is the American Institute of Architects. So the way it works is after you satisfy NCARB, then you take the exam. And after you clear the exam, both NCARB and AIA become satisfied, and you can start writing AIA after your name. And then at the same time, with your examination score, you can go to individual state licensing board to get your architectural license. So although they are like, this is kind of confusing, like what's NCARB, what's AIA, what's license, but they're all part of the same process. Once you clear your ARE exam, you become an AIA architect, and you become eligible to go to the state licensing boards to get a license, etc. So this is all part of the same process.
Thank you, Brahmada, for the insight. And next question in chat is from Rudida, I guess. He's saying, how is GIS and GIS software impacting the profession of architecture and planning separately?
I think Debargha can take that.
Yes. Yeah, I can speak about both of these because our firm does work in architecture and planning. And that's actually an easy and difficult question. Whenever we work on planning projects, GIS is integral to that. From a number of perspectives, what we do on this site, what's happening outside of this site, what are the things that are influencing. So all aspects of GIS are integral to most of our planning projects. When we do work in architecture, now that's a whole different thing. I mean, it has been almost 15 years. I've been going back and forth, and it still is a problem that the projection systems for GIS, it will not match CAD files that we have, the 2D CADs. And we spent an inordinate amount of time with our clients trying to reconcile the two. So I think the civil engineers, they are pretty good with CAD along with us. But you talk to any of the other professions, the mechanical engineers, the IT, the audiovisual, they are pretty bad with integrating anything with CAD, even though there are site infrastructure implications for them. I wish it was better, but again, there is sort of a mismatch. So I'm not sure, Totila, if I answered your question.
Thank you, Debargha, for taking the question. And we have around 6 to 7 minutes left. So the last question for today is, looking into the future, what emerging trends or opportunities do you foresee in architecture and planning? And what advice would you offer to students and recent graduates pursuing similar paths?
So I can take a stab at that. So one of the things that you got to do all your life is keeping your the window of your mind open. That is probably the reason behind, even after getting your license in the US, you are expected to complete 24 learning credits, a learning unit they call. You have to keep knowing, keep getting newer knowledge, and you got to prove to the board that you have taken, depending on the board, 18 to 24 credits. Like any profession, one of the things that's very interesting, in my career, I started from AutoCAD 10 probably in Shumit Ghosh's office in Delhi. and then from 10 to 12 to 13 to 14, and then slowly we transition to architectural desktop, then to Revit. So it's almost like every 2 years we are being taught how to draw a line. In the end, what matters to the contractor is what's the printout, but how do you draw that line changed over time in my career at least 10 times. So keeping your you know window of your mind open, learn new things. Back then, when we graduated, a senior architect in the firm can teach how to draw to a junior architect in the firm. But the things have completely shifted. Now the senior architect in the firm do not even know. Like I, for one, I don't even have CAD software in my computer at work. All I do is I go to the junior most team member and learn, how things are being drawn. Is for better or for worse. That is what it is now. Um, so keep learning. You got to be willing to learn new things to stay afloat. I think that is what I have understood.
Thank you, Brahmanda. We have one last question in the chat. I guess this is the last question for today because of the time crunch. So, from Saptendra Biswas, he's asking, how is the public procurement done for projects?
I think both Debargha and I could talk about that, but the Debargha, I'll let you do that.
Okay. So public procurement, I think it varies widely between local governments, state governments, and federal governments. Local governments, oftentimes, they have two different types of methods they use. One is they go through long-term contracts where they give long-term contracts to maybe 10 or 12 or sometimes 15 different contractors. And then anytime there's a new project that comes along, they will advertise that. People will go in. There would be a shortlisting done based on their qualifications and past experience. And then there is, again, another process where they'll look at finances, their work history, things like that, and then they will award the project. Usually, most people go in as a team. The state follows a similar system, but using different platforms. Same with the federal government, but sometimes there are some added nuances, things like what kind of a company it is. Some jobs are set aside for small businesses. Some jobs are set aside for disadvantaged businesses. So there are all different kinds of procurements when it comes to the public sector as it applies to local, state, and federal.
Yeah. And most of these agencies, Debargo, they have a designer selection panel. And
Yes.
it's a body of either 3 or 5 or 7 individuals. They
right.
individually rate the applications, and it is designed to be a very um, transparent process where
and systematic. Yes. Yeah. So if I have like 30 seconds, I think I just wanted to answer about the emerging trends. I think two things that I'm seeing, at least in planning, is climate resiliency. In the last few years, it has been at the top. The temperature rise, flooding, wildfire, vegetation change, those have been extremely important. And the second thing is resource conservation, integrating infrastructure planning and looking at alternate energy sources as much as we can see. Those are two things that are, we are seeing more and more.
Good point. Good point. I think I kind of missed that. In the architecture side, sustainability and resiliency, those are the two things that we keep hearing, and we have to prove that our projects are sustainable and resilient. Thank you. It's a good point.
Yes, like even in our classes now, in like every subject, like at the back of our mind, like we're made to think of that. Like the professors like try to make us think of sustainability in every design, every theory, or every session or subject there is. So like it was really important.
Oh yeah, I missed that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, thank you both for your time and invaluable insights.
Yeah.
We're going to have to close this session now as the time is almost over, and there are still some questions in the chat to be addressed, which we will definitely try to take up in our next event. So, the session has been truly inspiring to everyone, to me, to current students, and I guess the previous graduates as well. Also, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Shopunda for taking this initiative and organizing the entire SIG and these events with more to follow.
Good.
So,
And you have done an excellent work. I was talking to my daughter, who is also a second year student in college now, that a second year student will be moderating the chat. So awesome. Great job.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
to
so much.
everyone who were present here to listen to us.
Thanks everyone. Debargha, Abhijit, Nandini, everyone.